Hey there. So today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to be doing some theory crafting for the Shadows of the Galaxy Set 2 meta. This is way too early, right? Nothing here is supposed to be like a finished product. We're still only, I think at the time of recording this, 122 cards revealed, so it's about half the set. And because of that, this is kind of when I wanted to start experimenting with some of the cards so I could start getting an understanding of like how they play, what kind of leaders, like what kind of synergies to look for with certain leaders, revisit some older leaders and see if any new cards help with them. Okay, this is a work in progress. I just wanted to share a little bit about my process for how I test and how I start building decks. Nothing here is going to be broken or overpowered. It's just about starting to use new cards and figuring out how to make them work. So what I'm going to do, I have a list of decks. I'm going to open up Star Wars Unlimited DB, SWDB. We're going to do that right now. Okay. And we're going to go through some of these decks and just kind of talk about my process with them, what I'm looking for. Okay. So I think the first one we'll start with is Boba Fett. Okay. Mono Yellow Boba is already a very good deck. So I wanted to see so far with the new cards where I might want to stick some of them, how I want to change this archetype, what I want to keep the same. Okay. So in this main list that I've currently got configured here, I've got Dr. Evazin making an addition. I mean, 3/3 shield. I can't get much better in terms of like early aggro with that. We've added McClunky, which is a 1-cost trick that returns an underworld unit. So notably like Greedo, Crafty Smuggler, Dr. Evazin, Boba Fett, Gamorrean Guards, Bossk, Cartel Spacer, right? This deck's filled with underworld units. It's a nice way to like bounce back the shielded units that lost their shields. We're trying some new adventure. Talked about this card in the review. So this is really powerful with something like Fett's Fire Spray, allowing you to like return it to your hand, immediately replay it for 2, and you get another 5 damage. It works well with some of the things like Cantina Bouncer and Bodhi. And other than that, I actually haven't touched much because I think this deck's pretty awesome, just kind of in its old configuration, and I don't want to flood it with a bunch of new cards and kind of lose track of what the deck is really trying to do. This is an aggro deck, and I think there's going to be a lot of new options. There's a lot of hype around some of these cards, right? This one came out today, actually, as I'm doing this review. Triple Dark Raid. We've got Relentless Pursuit, which is a capture card that puts a shield on a bounty hunter. Boba Fett's Armor. Bazine. Okay, these are all cards I think are a consideration. But when I'm looking at a deck like this, I don't want to just flood the deck with a bunch of situational cards like Dark Raid, Pursuit, Fett's Armor, Bazine. Like these are all situational cards in addition to New Adventure, which we did add, McClunky, which we added. Okay, so how do you keep the identity of this deck while also ramping it up in power level with the new cards? And that's going to be the trick here. I think there's going to be tons of tools in this deck and others too. But this one, I think, is kind of like Exhibit A just because the deck itself is already incredibly powerful. How do we keep the strategy intact, right? We can't just add all these cool new events and just play like a 30 event deck, right? And we can't add so many situational units like Bazine. And if we wanted Jabba, we could get that in there too, right? And then we've lost sight of a little bit of our aggro presence, okay? So I think it's important to look at these cards and definitely consider them. It's kind of what I do when I put them in like the sideboard. Is these are cards that I'm looking at. I'll probably like add some copies in at one point, see how they play. I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff, right? There's good cards that we've already not been playing that we could theoretically revisit. And there's cards that, we've been playing that maybe won't make the cut. And we look too at like Fennec, right? Do we want to go bigger? There's a new legendary that was revealed today, Dryden Voss. If we're going to play that, we're going to want to start playing capture cards, right? So are we going to try maybe a big Boba? It's a possibility, okay? But this is kind of where I wanted to start. I wanted just to stay lean, stay true to like what the deck was doing well already. Upgrade it a little bit with like a new Dr. Evasin's, I feel is a definite upgrade. McClunky could very well end up not being, but we're going to try it for now. And we'll kind of work from there. All right. So next, Palpatine. Okay, Palpatine Red. Currently not one that I like as much as Blue. Just I think, even though kind of all Palpatines are bad against aggro, Palpatine Red especially compared to like the Blue version. Boy, I do not know how to beat aggro decks consistently with it, but it's time to revisit. There's some new cards that I think are pretty cool with Palpatine, and we're gonna talk about a few of them. Scanning Officer, right? That's an official. That's in the same vein as like Yularen. It's not the most embarrassing stat line. It's gonna have some play with its one played ability is gonna like potentially hose some decks. So we're definitely gonna try this out. I think it's a pretty easy include with Palpatine because of the official tag. But more exciting right now are these two ships, okay? These two drops, Outland TIE Vanguard and Rokai Gunship, okay? The Gunship has a, when defeated, it deals 1, right? So we can toss this at something and basically deal 2 to it with Palpatine's ability. The Outland TIE is a body that leaves value, right? It comes in, put a token on something. If we want to sack this later, it's already provided some of the value. I think in addition to like other low cost units like that, like the Lieutenant is another one, right? It provides value and then you can sack it. This deck's pretty low to the ground. As you can see, it's tons of little units, and then the big stuff, right? Like the Vaders, the Palps, the Walkers, a couple of Ruthless Raiders, and a whole bunch of removal. And some timely intervention too. I think this card is probably going to be pretty good, especially with like Palpatine and Reinforcement Walker. So the theory here, why am I revisiting this? Well, I want to see if all these new little stuff, these fodder units, we're playing like TIE Fighter 2. Oh, and completely forgot Kylo's TIE Silencer is very important for beating like at early space starts, right? This is the first 3-power space unit we have on the turn 1. So yeah, I want to see, can this start competing with aggro decks, right? That's really the goal here. It's not to like have a finished product. It's just to toss all these little dinky units in here that kind of work well with Palpatine's ability and see if we start to get a shift. We start to feel like these matchups are getting a little closer, because from there we can start really honing in on like what Palpatine wants to do, which is go bigger than most other decks. All right, I'm gonna skip Kylo for a second. I want to talk about Moff Gideon. So played with Impossible German from Garbage Rollers, who was running like a version of this deck. It got me very interested. Moff Gideon, I think similar to Palpatine, he has a way to kind of power up dinky units, right? Units that do something small and then leave behind value, like the Outland TIE Vanguard, right? The Snowtrooper Lieutenant, both of those can attack for 3 with Moff Gideon, so they're like value plays, right? What else? So everything has an Overwhelm, so I feel like Entrenched is probably a really good card in this deck because we can still get base damage from that. Other than that, yeah, we're kind of going wide. We're pretty small, but we're still playing like the main control package that you would expect out of a blue-green deck. We got Power of the Dark Sides, Takedowns, Overwhelming Barrage, the new Fel the Dragon, right? So we wanna go pretty wide. We want to go pretty ground control heavy. Use it in trenches. Use our buffs like TIE Advance and Outland TIE to get our units fighting well on the ground. So hopefully we can bridge to our Vaders and Gideon's Cruiser. That's kind of the theory here. I think this guy's ability is pretty strong. I think +1 to all your early drops when they attack is a strong ability. It makes math better for you in general, which, you know, this game is a lot about math, and +1 is, I think, a pretty big deal in general. So I'm excited to see what we can do with Moff. The first look I have at him is with blue, just because that's kind of what someone played against me, and I thought it was pretty cool. And I'm going to start working on that and see maybe move into another color. I think that's totally possible too. All right, let's talk about some hero Boba. I kind of like this guy. I mean, similar to the Grand Moff Gideon, I think his ability to just be math better, like make math better all game is quite strong, especially with ambush, right? Like your ambush units getting +1 is massive. It buffs Sentinels. The fact that you can buff units that didn't come into play, right? So you play your 2-drop, the next turn you play something that has a keyword, you buff your 2-drop. I think all of that package is really nice. It's going to be a really good deck to play into units, and we're going to see what we're kind of doing here. So I want to start. I'm playing like 5 of these. I actually don't know why I only have 2 of the Droid Revolutionary. He's better than Crafty Smuggler, so we're going to change that right now. We have 5 of those 2/2 shields. Why are we playing so many? Well, you play them on turn 1. You play something on turn 2 that has a keyword, and bam, it's a 3/2 shield, and you can trade up with it. You can kill almost any ground unit that they played on the first turn without losing any value. I think that's pretty strong. Other than that, we'll play Battlefield Marine. I think that and the Scanning Officer are the only cards that don't actually have a buff in this deck, potentially. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, past turn 3, we're trying to ambush every turn. So on 4 costs, we've got modded cohorts and the Liberator gunships. Both cohorts ambush for 5. Liberator gunships ambush for 4. It's pretty massive, especially when people are playing 3-4 ships on the 3rd turn. After that, we've got our 5 cost ambush, Callus and Lackeys. Callus ambushing as a 5 is pretty strong. Lackeys ambushing as a 6, very strong. From there, we're going into our 6 ambushes, Rogue Squadron Skirmisher and Millennium Falcon. Notably in this deck, Millennium Falcon can instantly kill a Fett's Fire Spray, acting sort of like a vanquish for it. I think that's pretty strong. It's got the smuggle upside too. At 7, we've got Han. Han ambushing as a 7. Also very strong, right? It's ambushing all the way down to curve. We're throwing in some sentinels like Echo Base Defender and Bright Hope. We've got Home 1 to top it all off. And then we're playing a nice lean event package, Spark of Rebellion, and Spare the Target for some interaction. Surprise Strike is just a great card. E-Wing Reinforcement. There's plenty of other cards I think that could make the cut here, right? I don't even have like the 3-cost Millennium Falcon, but mostly because I think right now, at least when I'm testing, I want to ambush on curve, right? And I think playing a turn off curve by playing a Falcon on turn 2 might end up being a liability. We can definitely throw Timely Intervention into this deck to kind of give anything in the deck ambush. We already have so much, but might not hurt to have even more. I think we can play the Hotshot Heavy Blaster because its main use is the smuggle cost, which is yellow. So that's a card I'd very much consider putting in. I think that card is pretty awesome. And yeah, other than that, this is kind of like the first step I have with Boba Hero is like, let's just be a very good like unit combat deck and see how far that gets us. All right. Going to go back now to the Kylo. So this is Kylo Yellow. This is like, all right, this hard aggro as possible, right? This deck, most expensive card costs 3. Playing loads of 1-drops. We're playing loads of 2-drops. We're playing a little bit of interaction, right? Force Throw is pretty good just because Kylo comes out so early. McClunky, same thing. That's kind of our interaction. So many of our cards are cheap that we're just going to be able to like attack with them, bounce them back to our hand, kill something, play them back immediately. We've got like Guild Target, right? This is just to deal more base damage. There's like no other synergy for it in here, right? We're not even playing Jango Fett right now. The Blaster's awesome. Surprise Strike is awesome. Going to try some Arm to the Teeth. As in, this is actually, as a smuggle cost, the most expensive thing you can do in this deck. But this can, for 2 cost, be 4 damage. Yeah, the theory here is let's just use this ability incredibly aggressively, do as much damage to base as possible, as quickly as possible, have them dead on turn 4, right? This is what this deck is trying to do. And we're going to see if it works and how well it works. And does it need to go bigger? Is this like too easily countered by some stuff? And that's kind of what I wanted to start with Kylo Yellow. I think there's plenty of good cards in these colors. I mean, like I said, Jango Fett is a card that makes a lot of sense to me too here, especially with the bounties. We can get like Fifth Brother in here too. I've opted to like not play that many 3-cost units, and I prefer the space. And I think Boba Fett in general is a little stronger, but might not be, especially because of Force Throw. So yeah, that's kind of like what I'm trying to do here. There's nothing really cute going on. There's barely any synergy for Kylo in this deck outside of like Migs, and his own ship. But I guess the synergy is he comes out early and deals a ton of damage, and that's what everything in this deck is trying to do. Just come out early and deal a ton of damage. So we're going to start there and build from there and see, like, what is the lowest to the ground you can be in this deck. I think so far this seems to be my prediction for it. I think this is even more potentially quicker than a Sabine deck, just because of him being able to hit for 5 and his buff being, right, his leader ability is +2 damage instead of Sabine's ping, which is +1. So yeah, I think right now I would say if we want to go as quick as possible, it probably would be Kylo and some combination with yellow, maybe double red. But I think he looks pretty fun, and we're gonna work on that. In the same vein, I'm going to go to the other red-yellow villain deck. This is Grand Inquisitor. I love Grand Inquisitor, and I'm really excited for some of the new cards we got, like Jango and Chrysanthemum. Both have a lot of health, deal 3, right? So they all work really well with his ability. We're still digging in pretty deep into some trick synergy here with McClunky and sneak attacks of Jabba. That package might not end up lasting. That's something I kind of want to see. Like, is it needed anymore? I think sneak almost surely will still make the cut, but I'm not sure like the Jabba stuff will. Other than that, we're deciding to go for some bounties. Now, I want to talk a little bit about bounties in general, because they're good when they're good, but they're really clunky sometimes, and they definitely eat up your hand because none of these cards give you card advantage. Guild target. We're playing Rich Reward. I didn't like Wanted that much because it just felt like it never did anything. So I opted for some Rich Reward. But I feel like you need these bounties if you want Jango and Chrysanthemum to be good. But so far, Guild Target's really the only one that's really impressing me in these colors. There's another one in green, the Ramp Bounty, that I think is good. But those are really the two that so far have really like done it for me. I'm hoping to see some more that will make me want to include them more, because I really want these cards to work. And right now it feels sometimes like these bounties, like they're what holding it back, because we got some clunky hands because of them. So that's where I'm testing. I'm trying to see how it feels. I want to get what is the right amount of bounties in a deck, right? Is it 6? Is it 8? Is it 10? Because we want to be consistent, but we also don't want so much air in our deck where we just kind of like have too many draws that don't do anything. All in all, I think Grand Inquisitor has a bright future. There's so many cards now that like work really well with his ability. Punishing One is another one that, like, now we have 2 ships on turn 2 that work with his ability. We already know some good units in these colors, like Boba Fett, Fifth Brother. They're pretty good. Eva Zen, solid card. But yeah, I think the main test right now is to figure out this bounty stuff, Jango, Chrysanthemum, and the bounties, and see how, like, what we need. Like, how many of them do we want, and then work from there. Other than that, yeah, like, I've cut the Force package almost entirely, right? Like, it's just Fifth Brother. We're not even playing Force Throw, so that's definitely something that I could move back into, get the Seventh Sisters back in potentially, add the Force Throw, maybe Force Lightning, maybe some new Force cards that come out. But yeah, I think this is pretty cool, and I'm excited for Grand Inquisitor. All right, let's talk a little bit about Rey. So my buddy Ferrando has been playing this mono blue Rey deck and got me inspired because it was annoying to deal with sometimes. So what is Rey doing? Well, we're playing kind of off curve because of her ability. We want to use a bunch of 2-drops and low-cost units to make her ability powerful. And a lot of these units are quite powerful with +1/+1, right? 2/5 R2 for 2. C-3PO is a 2/5 for 3. Follow the Way would become a 3/5 for 3. Queel would be a 3/4 restore that does this draw ability. Distant Patroller suddenly becomes a little appealing. Restored Arc, right? I think the key here is that her experience counter on a lot of blue-based units turns them into like above curve units. We would play a Restored Arc if it cost 3 and it was a 3/4, right? Like, that would be a card we'd play. And now we can play it, but we can also choose to use her ability elsewhere, right? It gives us a lot of flexibility at the cost of action equity. So what's better, a 2-3 that you can then put one experience on for an action, or a 3-4 but that you have to pay up front for it, 3, right? Sometimes sometimes just paying 3 for it and one action would be better, but sometimes being able to like play something on one turn, buff it a different turn is strong. And that's like where I think Rey shines, is that being able to toss around that experience depending on how you need it is quite powerful. There's a lot of really good units that benefit from that experience. Like Concord Dawn Interceptors is absolutely annoying to deal with for aggressive decks. We've got like Yoda getting buffed up, Regional Governor, these ships, right? So I think it's on a control deck. It's like a mid-range deck with an absolutely absurd amount of healing. Makes it very good at unit-based combat. And where it might struggle would be control-based strategies, where you're not able to interact much on the ground with them. So we're going to figure out how bad is it against that, first of all, if it is, and then what we can do to maybe make it better against them, right? Maybe we just end up having to play like a mill plan with Vigilance. But I think this deck's pretty cool. It like looks a little dinky because like look at all these like low cost, like kind of weird units that we might not even be playing in a lot of decks. But all of a sudden you give them a +1, they're pretty strong. Like I think this works much better than Tarkin, specifically because the units in Hero Blue work much better than like the Imperial units we've seen that when they get experience, right? These are all big, like not all, but a lot of them are big health pool units, and big health pool units benefit much more from experience than things like 2-1s a lot of the time. On top of that, I think even though she's a 2/6, which is not great, Restore 3 is great, and I don't sleep on her actual leader side. I think the fact that this deck plays so aggressively on the ground and just clutters it up so much means that it's going to be not too difficult to get her out and not have her get one shot, which is usually the risk with leaders like this, like 6 health leaders that come out with 6 health, on the 6 resources. We've talked like Han, well, he comes out earlier, Cassian, Grand Inquisitor, Hera. A lot of these leaders kind of falter because they get one shot basically immediately sometimes. It's a huge risk. And I think it's going to be less likely in a deck like this for her to get one shot, and then she can immediately buff herself if she needs to. All in all, I think some kind of Rey deck will be pretty powerful, and I think this is going to absolutely hose some aggro decks if that's what you're going to want to do. And we're going to wait to see what kind of new tools we get for her. All right, Kylo Green. So did Kylo Yellow, which was like, let's see like the lowest to the ground we can get. This is not so much. This is a combo deck, right? This is to try to enable Palpatine's return and Palpatine. Okay, we want to get Palpatine or Vader out a turn earlier in this deck, sometimes multiple turns earlier if we ramp. And Kylo enables that, right? He's a self-discard ability. We've got Force Throw 2. But yeah, like chucking out down a Palpatine and then resurrecting it with 6 resources is pretty massive. Other than that, a lot of this looks like just like the good red-green cards. We're playing Removal, we're playing Barrage, we're playing Ramp, we're playing like the big units that we ramp into. I think what's nice is that Kylo, being such a cheap leader, gives you access to the Steadfast Battalion with ECL, so we can start talking about one-shotting some leaders with him. And yeah, like we added a little bit of synergy with Migs, right? I think Migs is pretty strong with Kylo's ability. And this is like where I started. Like, I just want to maximize that combo and then just basically play like a regular red-green deck. Is that going to be the finished product? Are we going to get more combo pieces? Are we going to want to be more of an aggro deck that has this combo finish? Or will it be more like a Vader light deck where we just like play the Vader cards, but instead of having a big leader like Darth Vader, we have a small one that lets us cheat out our massive units earlier with Palpatine's return. So this one's like, I think, a pretty simple like Theorycraft. I just want to see how consistent this is. how busted it is to get Emperor Palpatine out for 2 less resources. Is it good enough to win games, or are we just like being cute and then we lose anyway? That's what we're testing. That's what I'm testing. All right, Bossk Green. So another red-green villain deck, this time Bossk. I think Bossk's bounty stuff is kind of nuts, so we are playing a bunch of them. Again, as I said with the Grand Inquisitor stuff, how many of these actually end up making the cut is going to require a lot of testing to figure out like how it feels when you draw too many, how it feels when you don't draw enough. We are playing the Django synergy with these bounties. It's really strong. I'm not actually playing Chrysanthemum in this deck, but I could. And what I want to try to do, again, I mean, this is also trying to cheat out giant things if we can get a double ramp. There's cool stuff you can do with, like, if you turn 1, play a price on your head and ping with Bossk's ability. The next turn you can theoretically ambush a super laser tech into whatever you pinged, kill it, ramp twice immediately, and you can play Bossk on turn 2. Which is not actually that, like, bad, right? You only spent 2 cards. You ramped twice. You also killed one of their units, most likely, because you got to ping twice with Bossk's ability and ambush the super laser tech. So you could have killed anything with 4 health. You could have even killed in Dr. Evazan with his ping. And then, yeah, like from there, we're just, again, playing like this red-green villain mid-range deck that also gets to play Steadfast Battalion. And also gets to play all these good cards. And we're trying to like see if maybe like guild target, right? Triggering twice. Is that crazy? 6 damage? Could be. Could do like 20 damage in 1 turn sometimes with Bossk and a guild target and like a Django ambush or something. You can try to double ramp. So I talked about how to get him out on turn 2, but if you can ramp once theoretically into Bossk, then play your price on your head on one of their units, kill it. You immediately ramp twice. You go to 7. Those 2 come in exhausted, but next turn you're at 8, right? So that's, you could have a turn 3 or turn 4 Palpatine. That's kind of nuts. Turn 4, sorry, not turn 3. I think turn 3 would require some magic. Another really good card with bounties, Reputable Hunter. I think this card is kind of nuts. With guild target in your opening hand, you get to play this on turn 1 as a 3/4. Even with not in your opening hand, like turn 2, you could play a Rich Reward and play him. You can squeeze him in a lot of turns. Just a 2-cost 3/4 is really strong. I think this card, if bounties are core in a green deck, he will be core in those green decks. And yeah, I think Bossk looks really fun. Right now, I'm all in on green for him just because I think the 2 best bounties we've seen so far are Guild Target and Price on Your Head. So I want to play the 2 best bounties. If we start seeing good bounties in other colors, I could very well see moving out of this ramp stuff, although the ramp stuff is pretty appealing, especially with some of these big villain units. And the last deck I will talk about right now is this Han Red deck. So I've seen a lot of these new discard cards come out, stuff like Cripple Authority, Poe Dameron having discard built into his ability. We already know these colors have the primarily red, but yellow does have Spark of Rebellion. But these colors have the most discard, right? You've got K2, you've got where is it? Sorry. All right, Force Throw. We've got, I didn't put it in here, but there's Force Surrender. Probably not a main deck card in general, but definitely a card that you would play out of the sideboard against control. How deep you want to go on this discard stuff will really depend on kind of how a meta shapes. But right now, I'm not going the deepest, but there is a lot, right? I've got Force Throw, K2, Poe, and Spark of Rebellion. And I want to get everyone's hands down as low as possible, and then just hope that I top deck better because I'm playing things like Poe and Wrecker and Han and like Black One. Obviously, I don't need to top deck better if I just draw a billion more cards than them. I think Han is the reason I landed on Han on this shell instead of like playing something like Cassian Yellow is I just don't think Cassian is a very strong leader side. I think he comes out too late. I think I don't really want to be playing off curve for his ability in a deck like this. I think what Han lets you do with something like Poe and get him out on turn 3 is really, really powerful. I think the fact that we don't care so much about dumping our hand because we'll be dumping their hand too and hopefully refueling with black 1 makes Poe into something like Wrecker the next turn plus a flip turn incredibly powerful. We've I think Force Throw became all of a sudden so much better in this deck when it has a second Force unit, especially an adorable one like this. I think Grogu is really strong, and his 5 health means that very often you will be able to keep him alive so you can Force Throw. I'm not even firing Force Throw off just to like make sure I hit something good in their hand. I just want to rip cards out of their hand, even if it only means a couple damage. I think sometimes that's going to be enough if we are chaining discards and forcing our opponent to be top decking with us. I'm really interested in how a deck like this might unfold. Obviously, the actual cards in it very subject to change, but the core for me and the reason I went to this is the discard, and we're gonna see if we can really make something like this work, tax people's hands. I think we're already going to be pretty solid against aggro with decks like this. I think Han in general, just like being able to play bigger units early, has often been something that aggro has had trouble keeping up with. And yeah, I think there's just a lot, like this deck is cool because there's just like a lot of new cards in it too, right? Like Wrecker, Poe, Grogu, Ketsu, the big Millennium Falcon. Another card that I think is important for when like we're top decking, right? Well, we can play 5/5s from our resource row. Pretty strong. The Blaster's also another card that we can play from our resource row. So all in all, I don't want you to like go in here and like look specifically for like copy pasting decks, right? This is for fun. This is pure theory crafting. I'm just trying to start to get an understanding of how these synergies work, show a little bit of my thought process of when I like build a deck. I will then play it against some people. Cards will change constantly, right? And we're still got 130 or 140 left to be revealed, so it's not like anything here is going to be any remotely close to a finished product. But I think it's fun, right? Like I'm having fun playing with these new cards. I hope you will have fun playing with them. I hope this inspires you to start like messing around with your own lists, seeing what kind of synergies you can come up with. Take one of these blueprints and change it and see if you like something better. And definitely let me know if you find something really busted, because I'd love to hear that. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this. This was fun for me to do. It's a little different than like what I've been doing. But yeah, I hope to do some more Shadows content soon. I'll definitely be doing a weekly review of the cards that come out. So if you want to check those out, hop on the channel. I review every single card in Shadows of the Galaxy week by week now. And I kind of focus obviously on more like competitive play for them and ideas that I might have for them. And yeah, other than that, if you like this video, please subscribe, please like, and I'll catch you soon. Take care.